Arguably one of the biggest requests we get at Martin Meyer safaris is to celebrate honeymoons. And we're often in contact with the groom who obviously it's a surprise, or the family's paying for a journey to Africa, the wild continent. And with that goes a lot of logistics and planning. Fast forward, as a trails and walking guide, I've tracked many, many animals on foot, walked many kilometers on dirt tracks and wilderness regions. But probably the most intriguing story for a honeymoon couple on one of our safaris was one night of sleeping out in the wild on what we term on the continent as a sleep out deck, or a place where there were beds at height with mosquito nets. And we had, as a team, shopped for the freshest rose petals, the best bottles of bubbly, the ice, and we had prepared via the chef in the kitchens a wonderful smorgasbord of snacks and dinner. But at a sleep out, your dedicated ranger would also sleep out, but in separate accommodation, usually 300 to 400 meters away in a dome tent, just from a safety aspect, and further enough away not to hear the intriguing sounds of the nocturnal activity of said honeymoon couple. And this particular night, we'd finished cooking around the fire for the guests, had done a romantic turn down with the champagne, the bubbly, the wines, the snacks, the rose petals, the oil lanterns. Picture the scene, the Milky Way above you. Who is not going to celebrate and enjoy this as a romantic escapade for one night and feel like you're the only person on the planet Earth with your beloved? And I had retired, walking to my small dome tent a mere 300-400 meters away. And as I crested the dry riverbed, I heard the telltale signs of a leopard calling. Cresting the bank with my spotlight and my rifle, I shone, as you do, 180 degrees around, checked locations, and as the beam of my spotlight hit my beautiful accommodation for the night, a female leopardess, well known to me, having grown up with her, was lying surreptitiously on my welcome mat in the front of my tent. I stood still. She looked, saw me, obviously with my spotlight, and plonked her head back down on the ground as if to say, well, this is my bed for the night. And here I'm stuck 300 to 400 meters away, and behind me I'm hearing the most romantic sounds of this couple, and I'm so excited that they're having a great night, but I also need to put my head down. And so, not to disturb this particular leopardess, I picked up a small stick and I threw it in the direction of the tent, but a few feet away from her, thinking the noise of the stick, hitting the ground or hitting the tree next to my tent would be enough to startle her and her to move. It wasn't to be the case. She lifted her head, looked at me, and again assumed sleeping position. And I was like, okay, I can't get any closer without frightening her and bringing her into a fight or flight reflex. I do know her, but there is still 100 feet between her and I. Thinking quickly as you do as a ranger on your feet, I thought, what an incredible sighting to be able to showcase this said honeymoon couple. What I didn't think is they were being engaged in extracurricular activity under the starlight. And I walked back with a safe distance that I couldn't see, and whistled quietly and called them and roused them to try and say to them, please put something on very quickly, come to where I am and let me just show you this incredible sighting of this leopardess lying at the foot of my tent. The gentleman came out in his silk boxers. His bride very quickly was trying to rearrange her negligee and bushy hair, and it had been an incredible night of passion. And they followed me gingerly in their undergarments through the riverbed. We crested it safely, and I shone the spotlight and said, how incredible is this to see this leopard lying in front of my tent, so relaxed. And obviously the groom looked and he was like, Martin, that's fantastic, but could you take us back to our tent? And I'm sure that there were still more plans to be made that night, which I did. For the rest of the night, I slept halfway between the sleep out and my tent, up against the stem of a giant leadwood tree with my rifle and my spotlight, until my good friend and tracker came the next morning at 5 a.m. and had used the dirt track to come to where my tent was to check. And only then did this leopardess decide she'd had enough of the night and a good sleep, and she bolted past my very good friend in his vehicle, to which he came looking for me and found me half asleep. When we got to the sleep-out deck, the couple was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ready for action. What an incredible experience. Happiness.